the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
He's the right answer in terms of who leads Tennessee in tackles in 25. I think it's definitely in play. The other Tennessee football future bet question for you, Jack Foster. Would you bet that Tennessee adds a wide receiver and a cornerback here in the spring portal window?
I misread this at first. I thought it said or, and I was going to say easy yes, but and it's largely dependent on Gibson, I think, here. I don't know if Tennessee adds a corner if Gibson's back, but if Gibson's gone, yes. I think everyone should hope Tennessee adds a receiver. I'm not saying that the receiving room right now is just absolutely terrible. It has its fair share of upside. I don't know even if they do add a guy, it'll be a guy who starts, obviously, but no, I think you want to see Tennessee add a receiver. So I'll say receiver likely, and corner depends on whether or not Gibson goes or stays. And I guess you'd predict him to leave since the last report is he's going to. So I'll say, yeah, why not? Tennessee does add a corner and receiver.
I'm very curious because we talked about at the top of this episode that spring practice is back on Friday, and you've still got a couple weeks until the spring portal window opens, and
Right.
That also means Tennessee's got time to remedy the situation with Ricky Gibson before he enters the portal. My gut is, if Tennessee does not add a corner in the portal in the spring window, that means two things. One, Ricky Gibson's back, and two, one of these young corners popped here in spring practice. One of Trey Poteet, Tyler Redmond, Dylan Lewis, maybe even Caleb Beasley. One of these guys showed enough to Willie Martinez and Tim Banks that they'll be okay if Jermad's not able to go right out of the gate here, and they have Ricky back, that they'll be able to survive with McMurray and Gibson, and then one of these young guys that kind of flashed here in the spring. So I wouldn't panic if I'm a Vol fan and I'm looking at them if they don't end up adding a corner here in the spring portal window. They did have success in the past. Kamal Hadden was a spring portal ad years ago, and he turned out to become a really good player for Tennessee. I will say the thing that kind of makes me raise an eyebrow at receiver, if they do that, it's kind of, if they go down the receiver spring portal ad, I just feel like because none of these transfer receivers outside of Velus Jones, his first year, really was a plug and play guy in this system year one.
Yeah.
Bringing him in the spring window, you're even more behind the eight ball in terms of what you can ultimately be. I don't really see that making any sense at this point. Like, if you were going to add a veteran receiver in the portal, it should have been in the winter. And even still, we just haven't seen enough evidence here in the Heupel era that's going to be a great year one move. I mean, Javonte Payton was kind of the early Dante Thornton, but I mean, it was still limited in terms of how many receptions and all that kind of stuff he got. I don't know. I'm more conflicted at receiver and what Tennessee does there in the portal window this spring, because my gut is they'll add somebody because their only upperclassman is Chris Brazzell, and they have room in that to take
it's just
somebody.
A lack of known depth. They just don't have a lot of players that you can count on at that position, which is why I think, I'm not saying you can add a starter, but I think a body would be welcomed. That's my take on it.
I guess if you're going to add, I want to add a leader. Like someone who just fill the Brew McCoy leadership void of, if you're going to add a upperclassman, have someone who's not planning to, or not expected to be a serious contributor, because I don't think you're going to get those guys in this spring window. I want just here's the biggest cliche. I want a coach on the field at receiver in the spring portal window. Is, if you're going to do this, bring in a coach on the field. I don't know. Is that Walker Merrill's music from Wake Forest? I don't know.
Nowadays,
I think he's at Austin P. I think he transferred to Austin P from Wake Forest, if I remember correctly. I don't know. But don't hold me to that. My gut is they do add somebody, but I just feel like you missed the boat right? Like all the best. I mean, I just don't think you're going to have many big names here, if at
There are
all,
none.
here
Yeah.
in the spring portal. And I also just think acclimating these guys in 2.5 months just doesn't seem very realistic. Like you saw how long it took for Thornton to get comfortable. You saw it was a 2-year thing for Jalen Hyatt. It took time for the majority of these guys to get comfortable in the system. That like if you bring anybody in the spring window, like that's not a play for 25. That's a play for 26. So for me, I don't know. I'm just kind of like, maybe if the right guy's in and that's kind of what you look at is you're like, look, it's not ideal, but we like him enough that we could see him being a factor in 26. So I don't know, but I want to bet.
Which, if that's the case, would not be a older leader type. It
Yeah,
would be
unless they have 2 years. I mean, this year and next year, if they had another one, if
Fair.
they're like a junior, yeah.
Yeah. I'm just not all that excited about Tennessee's depth at receiver, and it just feels like a big question mark, but we'll see what happens. I think they'll end up adding somebody though. But like I've been saying, like you said, it's probably not going to be a guy who starts, or even if there's potential, it's probably not going to be a guy who ends up starting because of the short time to get acclimated, like you said.
For sure. Tennessee baseball. They're acclimated. They're still undefeated. They run rolled Marty Smith's team here last night in Knoxville, Tennessee. Radford run rolled a team that they were in jeopardy of losing to not long before they run rolled them with 3 grand slams in this game. Rhys Chapman is a grand slam machine this season. It feels like Tennessee's going to break the grand slam record, right? Like
they're halfway there, and they played.
Yeah, they're going to do
games.
it. They're going to do it.
You'd think.
It's wild in terms of just, I mean, you got terrible news down the stretch last week with Ozuna. It doesn't seem to be great in terms of the likelihood we see Alberto Ozuna play for Tennessee baseball this year. But it speaks to just the depth and just the, like, he was just like a cherry on top. Like Alberto Ozuna would have been such a...
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas podcast. Hell yeah.